And once we do that, hold on just a second. Get while it's loading up here. Can you still see me?
I can see you fine.
All right. And it's not live yet. Not live yet.
Right. Usually it takes a few moments.
And that's the thing with Zoom and everybody's connection nowadays. Everybody's going live anymore.
Yep.
It's crazy.
I'm with you.
All right. Not live yet. Man, it's having a hard time, man. All right. It's
Takes a few moments to get the connection set up. I get it.
usually not this long, but hang tight.
I think I'm showing you up as live on YouTube now on my Zoom screen, just so you know. It can be your computer.
There we go. Okay, so let's
Oh, I see.
that's weird though. There we go. Okay, cool. We're on. All right, sweet.
All right,
go
good.
ahead and
Good to go.
record. All right, hold on just a second, Jay. Let me go back to, I want to get the comments up here in case people have comments. Let's bear with me just a second. There we go. All right, cool. All right, so we got 10 people on board so far. Let me get the comments. There we go. Pop that out. All right. All right, good. All right, so welcome, my friends. Appreciate you all being here. We got everybody's favorite Medicare expert, J.O., with us here today. And all right, hold on a sec. There we go. All right. And so what we're going to talk about, we got three main things to talk about. And I just want to kind of go through the list, folks, is Jay's going to bring us up to date on coronavirus and health insurance. Coronavirus and health insurance, that's going to be a big thing, absolutely, because everyone, Jay, is worried about health insurance, as you're certainly aware.
Yep.
We're going to talk about Medicare and coronavirus, enrollment problems, Medigap issues in the future, Medigap, not Medicare Advantage, just Medigap, you're thinking, not a huge issue with that, or we'll get into that.
Sure.
But then we'll talk about Biden's proposal for Medicare eligibility to age 60, effect on retirement planning. Yeah, so we got a lot to talk about. Jay, we got Sandra. Hey, Sandra. Denise, right on. We got Invest and Grow. So far, so good. I appreciate that. And Jay's got a book out there called Maximize Your Medicare, which just came out. Jay, tell us a little bit about the book first and foremost. I know it just it got published by a real life publisher, not just self-published. Yeah. Tell us a little bit about it.
It came out in January, Josh. Thanks for having me.
Yeah,
and it's by Allworth Press. So now you can get it everywhere pretty much. And it's in most of the libraries, something out of the top 50, maybe something of 40 plus of the largest library systems. So when libraries reopen, you'll be able to get it there. You can also get it on Amazon. I put you can see up on my screen, I think there is the website and direct email. So your people can ask me your direct question. You know, I get asked a lot whether or not I charge up front. The answer is no. I'll have to hear what the actual situation is. And, you know, just the practical reality is sometimes it's going to take 5 minutes. I'll know that. Sometimes I know I'm going to get into, you know, a stack of documents this deep.
Yes.
And it's going to take me 10 hours. Then there's just a one-time fee, no matter how many hours it takes, that then you just basically leave it with me and we don't stop until we're done. Anyway, books, it's out there, very nice words by, you know, professionals as well as everyday people. The key thing about the book is that, you know, as just like you, Josh, you deal with real everyday people.
Yep.
And, you know, I wrote the book from that perspective, meaning, look, I understand that the person may be living on only Social Security. I know that some people may be dealing with high incomes and having to deal with the other taxes that relate to Medicare. So that's the kind of what distinguishes Maximize Your Medicare, real live examples of real people that, you know, we've interacted with over the years. So
absolutely,
that's it. And there's the website for the book, maximizeyourmedicare.com.
And also Jay has, I think I mean, just the blog posts that he does, the email, get on his email list. It's you don't get solicited, but I'm just telling you right now, my friends, You'll learn so much by subscribing on maximizeyourmedicare.com. Subscribe to his blog. It's a plethora. I'm very fancy here, Jay. Plethora of wonderful information, and it's nuts. And you don't get freaking just
No,
buy now, but wait, there's more. So if you're interested in health insurance at all, not just Medicare, but health insurance, you'd be crazy not to subscribe.
I'm too busy to have to create all the extra links to the next steps. So I try to keep away from that kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Jay does a good business. Now Jay's up in Michigan. So Jay, just a little bit about your we've heard you share Jay's name so many times, says Sandra. Right on. I like I said, I'm a big fan of Jay, but a little bit of background, Jay, and then we'll start going to more stuff. Just your professional experience. We've talked about this, many times, but it's been over a year since we last talked. So
don't even realize, right?
It's crazy, right? It's crazy, but a little bit of background about who you are, your background, and we'll just go into it from there if you don't mind.
Sure. I've been in Medicare for a number of years now, almost, I guess it's a decade, really. And the book actually, even though this is the first year it's published, the first edition of the book, my self-published version, came out in 2013, which sounds crazy that it was that long ago. Tells you how much time flies. And prior to that, I've been around the world in financial markets. I've been bond trader, I've been bond derivative trader. So I've lived through and seen a lot of, crazy stuff. And I think we can call, our current situation some crazy stuff. So the fact of the matter is, as you know, right, people are intimidated, worried by the fact that financial stuff looks like it's full of jargon. Try to boil it down to, and irrespective of who you are, whether or not you are like me, strictly educated, or whether or not, you're everyday person who grew up growing cantaloupes. And I have clients who have grown cantaloupes. So, to be able to kind of demystify, not be intimidated, use your everyday practical experience, use your everyday common sense to kind of attach what you already know, what you know to be true through your life experiences, to this crazy world where you've got all this jargon that seems like so mysterious. Try to demystify that. That's basically the topic. And so from there, you're talking about a range of different topics, whether that be long-term care, whether that be retirement planning, whatever it would be, the number of outlets that grows to basically unlimited.
And
so that
just real quick, Jay, I mean, your dad's a physician, you know what I'm saying? You
late father, but right.
Oh, yeah, right on.
And
I didn't, is that recent?
No.
Okay.
It's been decades ago, actually.
Okay. All right. Gotcha. But you have a derivative, you have a mathematic mind to understand, like this is what we talked about, how derivative market works, how the insurance products work,
sure,
from the math behind it, but you also have the knowledge of the health industry as well. It's a very interesting, and I would even argue unique combination there of the skill set of a derivative analyst, a bond analyst, plus the understanding to some degree. I mean, obviously you're not, under the saw, you're not sawing on people,
right.
but you know what I'm saying? You have a history of that kind of exposure as well.
Yeah, I grew up, as most people could guess, the dinner room talk was the doctor talking about, the complications of insurance. And I wrote in my book that, the reality is on how complicated health insurance as well as our real world. It's just not that simple. In other words, coming up with this simple solution, well, we're just going to have, one particular government structure or one particular program, and if one size is going to fit all. I just find that difficult to believe. There's 60 million people on Medicare. And we'll talk maybe about an additional 10 million more immediately on Medicare. And then on top of that, all of these other parties have enormous stress, whether that be your doctor, your small town hospital, for example. And you can see now, you'll see the ripple effects and stories in the press, that the reality is that it sounds like certain hospitals and situations are overwhelmed with our current situation. The reality is the primary care physicians are not seeing anybody.
Yes.
Nobody, right? The lights have got to stay on, the rent's got to get paid, just like every other business. So you don't really think that, oh yeah, and by the way, it cost them $1 million to become a doctor today.
Yeah.
You want to start today, you're 19 years old, that's $1 million. Like for certain. That's just you want to get through undergraduate school, and the school loan, unless everything, unless someone waves a magic wand and turns off all student debt, which I find unlikely, but in that instance, you're talking about that bill.
Yeah.
So it's just not that simple. And I always tell persons, because as you probably know, it's easy to find someone to blame. It's easy to find us to blame.
Yeah.
It's easy to find doctors to blame, some big identifiable party. If I just tell persons and I posit to them, I say rhetorically, I said, look, the reality is your grandchild is 19 years old, says, grandma, grandpa, I want to be a medical doctor. You tell them, no.
Yeah.
Bad idea.
Yeah.
It just doesn't make sense. Not worth the risk and the competition and the cost. You just don't know. And so anyway, we've digressed from, I guess I'm certain that your viewers have better things that they want to hear about.
No,
You can certainly get on it.
Piece, man. I mean, that's not good. And then you, on top of that, you have the $1 million debt, and now we got furloughs like crazy. So let's just dive right into this.
Sure.
Okay?
Sure.
Every single day I wake up and I sit there and I say to myself, no financial planning model, no Monte Carlo, no Wall Street, and no could have planned for what we're going through now. And yet it's here we are, and it is what it is. So we can get mad, which I do. But so what is that? What's happening with the health insurance model here? Because it's got to get ugly, right? I mean, just so going to coronavirus and health insurance. Topic number one, just take it away. What's your thought?
And I think the most important message is that if you've lost your health insurance due to unemployment,
yes.
If you've lost,
and this is my dog, Jay Pablo. So you have never seen Pablo because he was not here when we were talking before. So he's my assistant. He
gotcha.
Just needs to be involved. But anyway, go ahead.
So if you've lost your job and you used to be covered by health insurance, okay, so you're covered by your employer on their group plan and you got laid off. If you lost your health insurance for any reason and you used to have it, that does allow for a special enrollment period under federal rules, period. And that's very important because people are worried, especially in this day and age, right, where you lose your health insurance at exactly the wrong time. Well, those persons have a special enrollment period, and that consumer protection is federally guaranteed. People can use healthcare.gov. People can use their state-specific. People can go directly to the carrier. And we're helping people and taking that inquiry here all the time, where people are saying, okay, just lost my health insurance. Do I have the right? My son, or I still have my health insurance. My child, adult age child, lost their job. We live in a gig economy, et cetera, or a number of places where, especially, you can know that people who used to work part-time and were covered, those persons very likely have been laid off and then lost the benefits, of course. So there's that. In certain states, and it's not the entirety, there are certain states that are allowing you to enroll in health insurance even if you never had health insurance. In other words, they've reopened the enrollment process entirely with a blank slate, clean slate today. So there are days, and it depends on the state, because the state calls the shots here. Right. The state by state, they can determine what the eligibility rules are. So they can say, well, in the state of X, you can enroll no problem in health insurance. You've got to use a particular site. There are rules, but you can get to the finish line. That also includes the subsidies, which is the advanced premium tax credit. That's the formal name. I call it the subsidy towards a lowering of your premium, as well as, and very important part, is in certain, depending on the location, you can have lower deductible, lower out-of-pocket maximum than the original contract says. It kind of sits on top of your original health insurance contract. So that generally is the way that individual health insurance. Now, under the CARES Act, they've mandated a couple of things. One, which is well known, which is that testing and treatment for COVID-19 is without charge.
Okay.
Okay. Of course, it becomes nuanced from there, right? Meaning that, yeah, we've got some other complication. We had a pre-existing condition, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
We're not going to settle the complications here because we don't know what the doctor's going to write down on a record. We don't know how the insurance company is going to handle it, but the letter of the law, that's what it states. Okay, so once we get widespread testing and you have health insurance, that process should be with that no copay. Now, a special important exception to that, a couple of important exceptions is that those plans that are called short-term plans, short-term health insurance, number one. Number two is if you had health sharing, there are religious organizations that people have had health sharing. Those do not fall under these federal regulations. Do not. So the testing and the treatment of it goes by the rules that it sets.
Okay.
Okay. So that is not going to be covered by the rules that were recently passed. I think that that's kind of it on the individual health insurance side.
So you're working, you get laid off, right? You had health insurance through your employer. You get laid off. You have COBRA, but you're now carrying the full bill for that.
Right.
This is the premium credit that the states are offering, or I don't get it. What's
okay? So, COBRA's different. COBRA is a different matter, right? COBRA is that is if you get laid off from a large employer. If you get laid off from a large employer and you can get COBRA, then you have to pay the full bill under COBRA.
Okay.
Okay. There's an enactment now, proposed legislation, which seems like we've got a new bill every day.
Right.
Which will actually pay for that, but that's not passed.
What's this? Is that in the House or the Senate, or who's bringing that to the table?
I want to call it the House.
Okay.
I call it the House. That the House has proposed this, but that is not law at this point.
Okay.
So as you rightly point out, that people didn't let's say you're covered by your large employer,
right.
And you found a minimum cost while you're working, you don't get revealed the full sticker price you do under COBRA. So you end up seeing the full price, and it's not going to be pretty. And so I encourage people, even if you have COBRA, I generally tell a person at least go and find out what exists in the world, because depending on your situation, the practical reality is sometimes it can be too expensive for people.
Well, Jay, if you here we are in April, beginning of May, you just got laid off. So you got 4 months of income under your belt. Some of these people won't qualify for ACA premium credits because they made too much money to get the credits, right? So they're on their own, essentially. It's like COBRA.
There are a couple of complications here, and this is what we're helping people with. And very large mistakes need to be avoided here, which is the complication is that you let's just say, for example, you earned X dollars. You've got to report those first 4 months of earnings as part of your annual salary, because you need to use the entire year's worth of salary that you will have received, not just from the time you were laid off. Not just from the time you laid off.
Really?
You have to look back from January. You have to add January, February, March. So sometimes we've got these people in the world, unfortunately, well, just to give that people don't want to talk with me for some, they don't like financial people, etc. So they try to do it themselves. The mistake that some people make, and that's why our clients don't make this mistake, is that there are all these questions that people get asked before you get told what's your credit going to be. Okay. Well, in order to do that correctly, you've got to input your application correctly.
Right. Okay.
And if you don't put your application in correctly, you get the wrong answer, and then you're opening yourself to a huge tax bill next April.
No.
I've seen this. It has cost persons over $10,000
Ooh.
when making this error.
Ugh.
That's right. So these are not small numbers here, because the absolute number, the absolute cost of health insurance, high. And then in addition that, the subsidies, very big. So as a result, all of a sudden I violated a tax rule. You don't find out until the next year. You have to pay back the subsidy you've received. So it is tricky. That's why I've been encouraging people here. Let's walk through this together step by step. In this case, you know, our fee over here is going to, it's not even going to register in the round as rounding error, because like I said, I have seen greater than $10,000 errors when doing this wrong.
Yeah, and
then I don't get called in until November. I'm like, look, you've been receiving this for 4 or 5 months at 2,000 months a year, $2,000 a month.
Exactly.
Has been your subsidy that you weren't entitled to.
Exactly.
Do you understand what you've done?
No, I mean, think about it. I mean,
we're trying to avoid
this. COBRA, my health insurance was $2,100 a month. You know what I'm saying? So if I thought against the, I hate to say illegal, but against the law, that I could get that as a 100% premium credit, nah. I mean, someone's paying for that, and ultimately it'd be me. That's
so on individual health insurance, as you can hear, the rules, and this is the way it works for health insurance generally. The rules are actually largely in the consumer's favor. That's the way the rules are set up. However, navigating the rules and practically connecting the dots for everyday people is another matter entirely. And some people, as you know, they believe that they can do all these things themselves, and that may be true. Okay, do I think it's true? Well, I'm trying to help people avoiding these pitfalls. I won't call them traps.
Right.
A trap is something that someone else sets intentionally to hurt you. Okay. Actually, these rules overwhelmingly are set in your favor as a consumer.
Yeah.
But you do need to know how they actually work.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So anyway, that's it for individual health insurance, and we're probably going longer on that. So I'll try to speed along to Medicare. For Medicare.
Yeah, Medicare. Right on. Keep all right. Right on.
For Medicare people, again, COVID testing under Part A and Part B is 0. Okay. In addition to that, for example, if you're in a hospital and we're being treated, that's covered by Part A. Okay, so Part B covers the testing. Part A covers the hospitalization if resulting from COVID. Okay. Now, that said, the rules apply. Okay, and what that means, for example, is to Medigap and Medicare Advantage policyholders, that means different things, as usual. Under Medigap, people don't have to worry, meaning that it could be for COVID, it could be for a complication, it could be for a pre-existing condition, etc. If you have a Medigap policy, then if you've satisfied the Part B deductible, close to $200 in 2020, Medigap pays the balance. Between Medicare and Medigap, it pays the balance, period, no questions asked. Okay, as long as the doctor's not practicing voodoo, which they do not. Okay, so it's as long as the procedure is medically necessary and appropriate, the combination of Medicare and Medigap pays the entirety. And a big point I mentioned in the book, and I try to mention anytime I talk, that's what you're paying the premium for. You're paying premium under Medigap because things don't move, meaning the policy doesn't move and it's in your favor, period. That's the bottom line. So no matter what happens, meaning some other complication from COVID, something non-COVID gets discovered, none of that matters. Medigap covers the balance, period. No questions asked. So in a crazy world where all the facts are changing and all, et cetera, the stability of Medigap, you're paying for the stability of Medigap under a wide variety of circumstances.
That's, man, 100%. That's why I love Medigap, because you have, like, everything else is moving, that stays stable.
And that's in a nutshell. Now, does that mean that it is practical reality? You know, and the fact of the matter is, the fact of the matter is that a number of persons live on Social Security alone.
Yep.
People are withdrawing from their retirement funds. You know, you've got, I don't know, 7,000 videos out there, Josh, about, you know, how people are pulling money from particular whatever sources. And they don't necessarily have this money, because at 75, 60, once start at 70 and above, you know, you're talking about upwards of $2,000 and up per year per person. Okay, for Medigap. Certainly that's going to be the case.
Yeah.
And I'm just talking a lowish number. If you live in an expensive state like Florida, you're talking about double that.
Yeah.
Okay, and the fact is many Americans don't have that. For that, I've been suggesting, look, you need to have at least Medicare Advantage, because it must have an out-of-pocket maximum.
Yeah.
There's a cap on the downside, right? That alone. And I'm not going to get into the tangent. In the media, some people in the media like to call Medicare Advantage a trap. I just don't buy that, because the reality is that is the rounding error to deal with the networks and these other complications of Medicare Advantage. There are complications that you need to understand about Medicare Advantage. They're rounding error compared to unlimited financial downside, right?
Exactly.
They just do not compare. So I understand that the media needs to get clicks and things like that to say, you know, I didn't know this, the insurance company is trying to pick me off, or this, that, or the other. You know, it's a trap. It's a trap.
Yep.
It's not a trap.
Yep.
It's not a trap, right? Crazy people write books, you know, to say, look, this isn't a trap. This is the way it works. There are real reasons for the way that it works.
No, so, like I said, Jay, you have an upper limit. You know for a fact what your maximum is going to be.
Exactly.
That has a value to it that you really
huge value.
Exactly.
And not only that, and in almost every state, in most states in the country, you can find a Medicare Advantage plan that has zero premium. So to have those features, right? Very low premium and at least you know what your maximum downside is. That combination, all the rest of the issues are just not that important compared to those two.
I could not agree more.
That's it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so there's so much noise, and Medicare being, you know, obviously, you know, political football and this, that, and the other, you know, the main thing is to keep your eye on those two central facts. Now, that said, under Medicare Advantage, under COVID, as you would expect, is a list of copays for treatments, etc. Now, under COVID, it's supposed to be zero. But now if you get to the complication, okay, it wasn't COVID, it was something that existed in the past. Then could you be assessed a copay, a charge? In theory, the answer is yes, and that will depend on your Medicare Advantage carrier entirely. Okay, so that's how Medicare is handling it. That's how Medigap is handling it on one end, and that's how Medicare Advantage is on the other. Pretty good, generally speaking, as usual, though.
Yeah.
The satisfaction of Medicare, you know, at the end of the day, for people who are actually on Medicare, high, 90s% once people get through the complicated rules.
And Medicare Advantage too. I mean,
absolutely.
Yeah.
And so this is just more a consumer choice.
Yeah.
I tell a person this is a matter of math of money matters, and that's where, you know, people like you and me come in, which is that financial planners going, okay, yes, how much are you willing to pay? What tax are you willing to pay for this extra stability at Medigap?
That's exactly right. That's what it comes down to.
That's what it comes down to.
Let me just veer off for a little bit.
Sure.
Medicare is hurting much worse than Social Security, and given that 26 million people are no longer paying, or 26 million unemployment, these people are not paying. You know, they're part of the HI, hospital insurance. Jay, Medicare has got to be in a just significant world of hurt. I know. Look, I know you're not on the trustees. I get that, but man, it can't be good, right? What do you think about with this? This can't be good for Medicare.
You know, I'm not sure is the answer. Now, the reality is what you've said is correct, right? Which is fewer people paying the HI tax,
Yeah.
which is for Part A, right? The employers, you know, people don't see this. Employers get assessed this tax to fund the hospital insurance, as well as, and the federal government is out there with the budget paying for Part B and to subsidize Part D, which is the prescription side. Do the math of the fiscal realities become any easier? No, it's like you just pointed out, it's got to be obvious. The trustees came out, I guess, you know, within the past week and tried to say that the solvency of Medicare, you know, under different situations has been shortened by by a year, by 2 years.
Yeah.
The reality, the political reality can be something different, whether or not, you know, I'm going to get elected and, oh yeah, by the way, I'm going to disband Medicare. I'm not sure if, not sure how successful somebody, no, exactly. Right. So do I spend up now, can this mean, however, that the benefits weaken in some way, or that it is forced to make other parts more competitive? That is true. And you know, people have asked, because the reality compared to when I first released Maximize Your Medicare to now, the first edition of Maximize Your Medicare was that Medicare Advantage is not very good. The amount of costs, the premiums were high, the co-pays were high, the deductibles were high, et cetera, et cetera. The reality is just the competitive pressure of the sellers, right? You're talking about these huge companies, smartest guys in the room, full of computers, full of, you know, legal writing power. They competed it away and they did it. And you can see it in Medicare Advantage. So I'm not here to tell you, okay, well, that's going to be the death of Medicare. I'm not on that camp. No. Could I see it weakening? Could I see original Medicare being weakening? Meaning, could I see your co-pays for the Part A deductible higher? Yes. Yeah. Could I see the Part B deductible higher? Could I see the 20% being changed? Yes. Could I see skilled nursing facility co-pay increasing? I could see that trim changing, those details changing. Yeah. Could I see, okay, well, everyone's going to have to fend for themselves. Yeah, I just find that politically impossible.
Or the taxes are going up, though. I mean, that's
that's different. That's a different. That all said, whether or not this is the time that the rub, you know, we're not going to resolve it here, right? Right. You could say the rubber should have already hit the road. Yeah. So again, that's more of a thing for the future. You know, my crystal ball on that topic just, you know, certainly doesn't work. So
yeah, no, it's in fact, the trustees report on Social Security also said it's weird. They didn't carve a year off. They carved what was it? They it's still 2035. They carved 1 percentage point on what they could fund. It went from
something like that.
Yeah, right.
But you call it tomato, I call it tomato.
Right, exactly.
I mean, that's just the same. That's the same thing.
So what do you see in the so we talk about actually I do want to initially I kind of downplayed this Biden proposal thing because but then if we're going to Medicare at 60, and I see this is the interesting thing is that if we're going a route where look, I don't at this stage, who the hell knows, you know what I'm saying? But if we're going to a route where we're going to have more coverage for more people, you know, talk about the Biden plan and just anything that you know about. It seems to me it's like it's already hurting. So how do we? But then I see the argument. I'm sitting there thinking, Jay, these people, these 26 million didn't ask for this crap, but they now got to fend for a freaking COBRA, and they don't have any money. I mean, my God, they're not working. And so I'm sitting there thinking, and I just did a video today, and that if you're born in 1960 or 1961, you're going to get hurt for your Social Security benefit. It's insane. And none of you. So talk about the Biden proposal, and let's see what the what your thoughts on that, if you don't mind.
Before we get to that, let me just, one thing I haven't mentioned about Medicare and what has happened for people first turning 65, or for example, let's say, which is the enrollment process. One of the main points and the main theme, that the common thread that I've been trying to draw on every, in addition to that, we had mentioned, there's a Facebook group. It's a closed Facebook group. You have to apply, you'll get accepted, but I share, my comments on news articles and things like that.
Yeah.
Anyway, I just tell people it is very important not to delay enrollment.
Yes.
Not even for a day. Meaning that, let's just say that you're born in August and you're turning 65 in August of this year. Your enrollment window begins on May 1st, right? Which is Friday. I've told the persons, our clients who have come to me in advance and say, Jay, how do I understand Medicare, et cetera, et cetera. I said, that's all fine. On May 1st, not May 2nd, on May 1st, go to Medicare.gov and enroll in Medicare and apply for Medicare. The reason is that, as you know, Social Security Administration offices are basically closed. You cannot go in there and file. That means you have to file either physically, meaning by paper form, which can be filled out, or online on Medicare.gov. The issue there is errors.
Yeah.
In fact, we have met over the last month, more of our, probably a certain majority, certainly over 50%, I've discovered errors.
In their applications, or errors in their claim, or what?
So what ends up happening is, let's say, okay, I've been laid off and now I'm going to start in Medicare, and my wife turned 65 in August, for example. Fine. In which case we've got to hustle and get her on Medicare. I'm been laid off. I'm already Medicare eligible. Therefore, I get to go right on. They go and try to apply. What ends up happening is you have to show evidence that you had health insurance if you're a 67-year-old.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Those have extra forms. You don't get to attach those forms that easily into Social Security. In addition to that, it's clear to me, and I'm connecting dots without seeing facts, so somebody can call this me speculating, the errors resulting on what days show up as the Part A and Part B effective date are bad, because the insurance carriers, they're relying on that data. So it's that garbage in, garbage out. So what happens is, let's say I was 67, I got laid off, and I enrolled for Medicare. If I get my Medicare letter that says, welcome Medicare, Jay, it's going to have a Part A and a Part B date. If they're wrong, my eligibility for Medicare Advantage and Medigap changes. So you can see what ends up happening, which is, it's not only are you not sure about whether or not your Medicare starts on time, you're also not necessarily sure whether you're eligible for Medigap or Medicare Advantage on time. You can't tell, and those rules are strict, and it's not the carrier's fault. The carrier is relying on the federal information of what your Part A and Part B days say. That's it. There's no exception. And so as a result, what we've seen is a huge amount of errors on this original letter. And now you can obviously see, under this time people are worried as it is, that now all of a sudden you've got this other thing that they were not necessarily responsible for, that they could not anticipate. Another, and it's very complicated, because I can remember just the other day, in Ohio, that the dates were wildly wrong.
Yeah.
In which case, we were literally a day away from too late to enroll in Medigap.
Ooh.
1 day away. And 1 day away and just 2 days away from the spouse being able to enroll in Part D. So you can have, so I just encourage everyone, and it's a point that I make in this book, which is other reasons not to mess around. Basically, you've got these rules hugely in your favor, take full advantage.
Well, you talk about that in other episodes we've done, and even on your own, some of your interviews and podcasts and stuff,
Sure.
just about, look, if it's free, don't, you know what I'm saying? Like, don't delay. I don't want to get too deep in that, but I just remember, it's like, that makes sense. If they're giving it to you, freaking use it, because if you don't use it, who knows what happens? You know what I'm saying?
And we're not going to resolve whether it's right or wrong, or I tell fair is not a word that I'm using here. This is entirely what the rules say. I will help you. We've helped people. We continue to help people. That's what the book is for, to help you navigate the rules. But the rules actually are in the consumer's favor.
Right. And so if you're a consumer and you're not taking advantage of that, you're leaving money on the table.
You're leaving something on the table, whether that be benefits or costs. Those are the same thing.
100% right. Absolutely.
Now, what you're talking about Medicare and turning to 60, a couple of interesting-ish, maybe, interesting things here. Number one is the Biden proposal actually has a funding solution.
Oh.
Yes.
Surprising.
And this is a graceful, elegant thing about it, which is immediately you become eligible for Medicare at the age of 60 instead of 65. So, this is the day that authors of books on Medicare, are looking forward to, right? All of a sudden, 10 million people plus become eligible for Medicare overnight. The money's right now, the way it works, there would be a separate pot of money to fund it for taxes. Okay, so the 70-year-old will not, it's not coming from their pot that they've already paid tax from. Okay, from the Part B part, etc.
Right, exactly. Right.
So at least I can see now. I'm not going to, we'll have to see when the rubber hits the road whether or not that actually works. But the reality is that's what's been proposed. So they have had an eye towards the rationale about what this would do. Then again, in light of $6 trillion of federal financial assistance, okay, I'm not sure how much this is, should be debated. But what this really is, Josh, and the reason I think it's an interesting topic is, I spent a fair amount of time on, other shows and, as the guest, and on my own. On one question I get from people is, well, how soon do I have to consider Medicare when I consider my retirement, the entirety of my retirement plan?
Yeah.
Because, one of the analogies I like that you use, is that you see this healthcare costs you $500,000 under retirement. And then you say, okay, well, I'm going to spend, $1 million on food. I don't need $1 million today.
Right. Exactly. Exactly.
Right? But what this does do is now all of your projections, your planning for healthcare costs under Medicare now dramatically decline under Medicare, and they decline sooner. And now all of a sudden I tell people when they're 65, they're self-employed, or, they ran a small shop, they run a small dress shop.
Yeah.
They're at 60, they're at 65. They say, I'm going to close up shop, I'm going to retire. I say, congratulations, you just got a pay raise because you no longer carry your insurance, which costs $900 a month. You're going down to $260 a month. You have made yourself $600 a month running.
Just by turning 65. Exactly.
And by the way, your benefits have improved by a ton.
Yeah.
Well, now all of a sudden that's 10 extra million people. Okay. That also means that the people who are planning on retirement when you're plugging in your numbers and forecasting how much you're paying for healthcare cost, which should be in there, right? I'm not, and obviously your subscribers would know that because you've told them this multiple times, that now all of a sudden you're on a lower cost for health insurance a lot sooner. So now all the choices about, well, am I going to take Social Security at 62?
Yeah.
Because I'm tired of working, I'm done.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Now all of a sudden, you also get Medicare. And which could be down to, as I said, Medicare cost, just the simple blocking and tackling. Medicare costs $144 this year and change. Medigap, when you turn 65, currently costs, from $100 to $125, $130 a month in most states.
Yeah.
So you're talking about $300 in total, in full. That's your number,
right.
Which is a much lower cost, which now of a sudden, which is good news. It also,
and Jay, it's a much lower cost for 5 years.
For 5 years, exactly.
Right.
So that's a big number, right? So now if you're talking, and you don't have your spreadsheets out, and I don't either, but if we're doing that on a podcast, you're talking about 500. This is 60 months of $600.
Exactly.
That's $36,000
Yep.
over the 5-year period, plus better coverage.
Exactly.
Notable and not close, much better coverage. So that's number one. The second thing for persons who do earn a high income, okay, who have been hit by something called IRMA.
Yeah.
Well, in order to deal with IRMA, the IRS is looking back to your 2018 health insurance, your 2018 tax return. If they look 2 years, so what I've been telling people is the guideline is, you are calling me to discuss how health insurance, if you haven't been in the past, is if it's your first time calling me, when is that time to call me? It's 2 years prior to the time that the first person considers either Medicare or retirement.
Mm-hmm.
The earliest of those two. Well, now that means when someone turns 58. Because now you're trying to also optimize to possibly avoid IRMA if you can.
Yep.
And so now you can understand a lot of mistakes are made because they take money from their qualified funds. Hey, I need a new roof.
Yeah.
I don't want to use my money in my checking account. Let me just pull it from my IRA.
Yeah.
That becomes taxable income, as many people know. However, what it's done is it may have bumped them into an IRMA bracket, and now all of a sudden their IRMA costs more.
Yeah.
I've seen other situations. People borrow from their IRA in order to lend money to their adult age child.
Yeah.
Right. In other words, they go to the wrong source, and some of this cannot be avoided.
Right.
Right. I'm not talking about this. Right. Life throws at you,
right.
It's a curveball. Okay, you deal with it the best you can.
Right. Exactly.
And that part I'm not talking about. What I'm talking about is about situations that can be reasonably avoided. And there's one. And part of that is, okay, I get Medicare at 60 now, and I have money to retire, or I want to retire at 62. And here's a simple example. Someone wants to retire at 62, get their lower amount of Social Security. Fine. And they still decide, I still want to retire. Fine. If that is the time, then the time to start considering everything and the way that the money will work is actually at age 60.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Because you're also trying to avoid IRMA here, right? And have that be part of the equation. So that's the second topic. So back to Biden, and that's the Biden proposal. Yes, I mean,
where's the funding coming from that you said? So he's got this pot of money from, obviously taxes, but how, where, when?
No, that is taxes. I mean, there make no doubt about it that
right.
some amount is going to have to be allocated from the general budget. I don't think there's any question about that.
Yeah,
Now,
right, exactly. It's not just going to show up. You know what I'm saying?
Well,
Yeah.
we're going to have some back and forth on that matter. I mean, we don't have the full flush out, so it's not for me to be, speculating about political outcomes. But if it comes about, what I'm really talking about is the fact that you need to it pushes the planning process to actually sooner for retirement.
Does Biden's plan ban private insurance like Elizabeth Warren and I think
No,
Bernie?
no, that's Obamacare. This is Obamacare plus.
Okay, gotcha.
Okay, so what now? This is not, the headlines are full of other news,
Right.
Once we're focused back on what this thing actually says,
Right.
there's going to be pushback from every large stakeholder, which means insurance companies, doctors, hospitals. The football will be in full flight, being tossed around and kicked around. But that is for everyday people, one thing, which is a very good thing, but yes, also, means more planning ahead.
Has Trump have any proposal on this at all, Jay? Anything? I haven't heard anything. Have you heard anything?
Well, I think that no.
Yeah,
Medicare as it is, what we have focus on is surprise billing. Oh, what I would say is that inside the CARES Act is you're not supposed to receive something called balance billing under health insurance. So balance billing, for those people who are not familiar with the term, let's just say a procedure costs $500. The doctor and hospital can say, that's not enough. I don't make money there, whatever reason. And you have health insurance, and that's the agreement. Can the doctor and hospital send you a bill for $700? The answer is yes. That where the $200 you're responsible for, the answer is yes. That's called balance billing. Under the CARES Act, the $200 for COVID matters is supposed to be outlawed.
Okay.
Meaning that's supposed to not be allowed, which is a certain topic during our, the past year has been surprise medical bills.
Yeah.
That basically is supposed to be solved under the CARES Act here.
But just for COVID related stuff.
Just for COVID related matters. Just for COVID related matters.
So no incentive to have aren't the hospitals getting paid more? You don't have to get political. Don't the hospitals get paid more to serve COVID patients than they do just regular patients? I've heard that every guy who dies of COVID gets $39,000 for the hospital. Every guy that dies from freaking heart attack gets $9,000. I'm literally pulling those numbers out of my butt. But
I don't know. I hadn't really looked or considered, the impact.
But just given what you said about this specific slither, there's nothing there. But everything else is still, you still get that yes, the whole thing is, which is going back to the whole thing of Medigap. At least with Medigap, you don't have to worry about any of this. You let the insurance company fight with the government and everybody else. And you were saying as an individual retiree, you guys work it out. I did what I had to do. I paid my Part B, my Part D, and my Medigap, and I'm good to go. You see what I'm saying? That's what makes that so relaxing, in my opinion.
And don't get me wrong, under Medicare Advantage, there's not supposed to be about this kind of surprise bill.
Yeah.
The headlines you've heard for surprise medical bills has to, something conveniently left out from articles and things like that, is that this applies to the under 64 crowd, under 65 crowd, not really for Medicare.
Gotcha.
Because Medicare Advantage, you say you have this exam or you've got some diagnostic CAT scan, PET scan, X-ray, blood test. Here's the amount. Here's the cost. And if you use the network, that's the cost. If you use out of network, there's a different cost, and here it is. And there isn't balance billing allowed under that situation.
Hey, Jay, someone just asked, just in your line of work, the guy says he's 65 now, but his wife, his better half, is 43. Where does he get insurance for her? Is that something that you can help people with, to get private insurance through ACA or something else with a guy who himself is on Medicare?
Right. And this is what you can see. This is largely the decision making here, meaning that right now, when you have a married couple, the
Right.
one who drives the boat is not the one on Medicare.
No, all right,
The
right,
one who drives the boat is the one who's not on Medicare.
right.
For example, can it mean that somebody stays on their employer provided plan? The answer can be yes, even if it's inferior to Medicare, because the spouse or other family members need to stay on the plan. But yes, absolutely. It's, if one spouse is on, right to your point, one person's on Medicare, one person is not, the
Yeah,
Medicare person is clear. The non-Medicare person has the unrestricted right to get health insurance, right? They have this, they have the right because whatever plan they had in the past is ending. But the issue and the reason that I work with people in advance of that
yeah,
is, hey, so you're not surprised by what that number is.
yeah.
I had the Cadillac plan. Okay,
Yep.
you had a Cadillac plan and you lived in Illinois. Do you understand this is $1,600 a month for yourself
Right.
if you're 63?
Yep.
Every bit of $1,600 a month because you wanted the Rolls Royce. You live in a place where stuff is expensive in Chicago. That's the cost. Okay, wait a minute. Well, that's 20 grand a year.
Right.
In which case, have I built in 20 grand a year of extra cost?
And
Don't
on
know.
top of that, I'm going to pull it from my IRA on top of all the other things I was pulling from my IRA. And now I'm going to pay even more when I hit 65 because Irma. Yes.
Exactly. So now, and just saying that healthcare costs, the cost equation here is a meaningful number.
Yeah.
And a meaningful number so that it becomes part of the entirety of financial planning. And in fact, to me, the dominant, the first spot. There's a reason I wrote this book, not about it, some, credit derivatives, for example. The point of Maximize Your Medicare is because everyone is eligible for Medicare. And as a result, this applies equally to everyone, no matter what your financial resources are.
Hey, man, that's why I love it, Jay, because this is not, unfortunately, most financial planners have this walled where if you don't have $1 million, we don't want to talk to you. And that actually pisses me off. But what I love about what the work you're doing is inherently, it is all inclusive. Everybody needs this stuff. You see what I'm saying? And everyone's going to have to go through the grinder to figure it out. Why not hire somebody? I mean, look, I'm not here to sell you. Not you, but these people watching. I don't. But the way I look at it is like, you think and I'm talking to people, not you, Jay, but you think Social Security is a nightmare. Wait till you uncover Medicare stuff. I mean, there's freaking literal rocket scientists who can't figure this out. It's nuts.
And the reality is, and this is the financial reality is, and a point that I've been making to all of our people, all of our clients, which is that to say, look, the reality is, I know there's, for every one Medicare book, for a person like me, there are 20 Social Security optimization numbers. The reality is the financial marginal difference, okay, on an annual basis is nothing compared to the annual difference plus downside under a health situation.
Man, 100%. 100%
right. They're not close. Yet we spend 10 times more time watching Social Security Administration videos and reading those books than we do on the one topic over here that you have unrestricted rights and, by the way, has many, many more times of financial impact to you almost immediately. Either on saved cost, I literally have, for the very wealthy, I know, and this is the case, that I know persons who, and you're talking about type A, they want to work, they love working, they've worked, they keep working. They keep working till their their early 70s. And I say, and then they call and they say, Jay, I'm thinking about retiring. I heard you know something about Medicare. And I tell them, yeah, I do. And then we get together and then I ask them how they've been insured. I said, okay, congratulations. And I say this tongue in cheek after getting to know them. In the back of my mind, I said, okay, you have overpaid for you and your wife and health insurance by over $100,000 over the past 7 years. $100,000. Now that person got in that position by not overlooking that detail, right? Nevertheless, that's what happens. Whether by cost or by benefit, the financial impact of healthcare cost planning on all of financial planning is so big that it has to be stop one. And you can see now that, financial markets are not only in one direction.
Well, Jay, it's even, you think it's bad on, so in terms of like a logarithmic scale, you got Medicare, Social Security, and then all the ink that has spilled talk about investments. I'm like, oh, good. No, if people just, for every hour they spent on their stupid investments, just took 1 minute,
Right.
and focused on Medicare. You know what I'm saying? I'm sitting there, how many topics are books on investment planning? And we know for a fact, you and I, looks like I'm unstable. Can you still hear me?
Yeah.
You still hear me, Jay?
I can hear you. I can hear you.
All right. We know for a fact that the investment market is let's just put it, very efficient. No way.
It's inherently variable. That's what I'm saying. But Medicare and healthcare and the beauty of Medicare is your rights and your options are federally known, and the carriers, they follow it. Don't get me wrong. And this, part of the reason I appear in public, part of the reason for the book, I'm like, look, it feels like that to the person because they're confused by the jargon. I can understand that. Yeah. But I promise you, unless it's human error, which can occur, it's not because the carrier is intentionally skirting federal regulation. That's just not that's impractical. They're closed, right? If they do so,
exactly,
put into the penalty box for years. This has happened. It's not worth it for them as a commercial enterprise when in a market of 60 million consumers, they're going to single out one person to not pay your claim or not to take your application correctly. That is just not, there's another explanation. You see,
especially, you say too, on the profit margins on each person is so small. It's like pennies, you know what I'm saying? It's like, is a mass. So for them to go after JO specifically and say, we're going to screw this guy, it doesn't make sense because it doesn't make sense.
And it's back to that when I started out the beginning, right? Is that people are intimidated and it's identifiable, find someone to blame, the national pastime. Exactly. When you have all that, it's easy to identify an insurance company. But if you just look at the facts, they run out.
You're licensed in all 50 states or just Michigan?
Oh no, in fact, more of our clients come from outside of Michigan than inside.
I got a guy on here, my man Moon, he said he likes you. He looks like your book's pretty good, but being a Michigan, that guy, he doesn't like you. He's just joking.
That's okay. I don't hold grudges. I put it this way. I even have people who are alums of Michigan State. So, and it's not going to be a problem. And if we have, what happens in insurance is you have to have what I call dip switches at the state, dip switches at the carrier. So we make sure that all of that stuff is in line in advance. We will tell you up front, no problem. And so that's the email address and website so that, people can reach out. There's a contact form there. And the
you're still doing, now you're on Robert Powell. He's with Wall Street Journal or something. He's a bigwig, but you're on his podcast too, right?
Jim. Yep, up on Jim Cramer's web. It's thestreet.com. Okay. He's got his own part called Retirement Daily. And so I'm the monthly, a couple of things. The other place you can find me, yes, I'm his monthly guest on a podcast on thestreet.com, Retirement Daily with Robert Powell. And, he writes for Market Watch as well. I've my quotes up there on USA Today, for example. And then another good resource online is something called MedicareResources.org. What I'll do is I'll put that in the, and I'm not sure, can people see, I'm not sure if people can see what I've written or my information, but my email is up there on your screen.
They can't see the chat stuff, Jay, but they can see them. They can see what you have there behind you, the email, your website, and your book.
Okay, so There's another website called MedicareResources.org,
Okay.
MedicareResources.org. And I'm an expert contributor, one of a few who contribute writings there. And actually, I had a very large, longish article on the ins and outs of IRMA.
Yeah.
We talked about taxation under Medicare. So people can certainly find me there. And of course, the hub to all of that is really up there on the website, maximizeyourmedicare.com.
And definitely go to Jay's, he can see, okay, people are saying they can see, okay, good. And like I said, folks, if you're just, look, you're going to get a huge amount of resources on Jay's regular post and everything. I don't know why you would not subscribe to that. What else? Seems like I got something else I want to ask you, Jay, before I let you go. And you can, that's what I think you already answered, but again, you can help people with private coverage. Okay, cool.
And
that's what I was gonna say. Long-term care stuff. We didn't even talk about that. Is that something you're privy to in terms of helping people if they want to discuss that? Are you licensed in that area as well?
Sure, of course. I've got all these other licenses, and I think most recently you had this, the universal life with long-term care rider.
Yes. Yeah.
So that's
any thoughts on, just not the video, but just any thoughts on ULs with a long-term care rider? Look, you don't have to be too, but
no, that's fine. That's fine. I'll give you my opinion.
Yeah.
I think that generally speaking, people have to deal with the idea that that life insurance with long-term care is valuable because of the fact that you can get your benefits pulled forward when you need.
Yes, exactly right.
That's the critical. The issue is that inside the contract are a dizzying number of moving parts. The idea that a consumer can filter through them is almost impossible. And in fact, but if I just, without using another hour, right, what I would say is the following is, I tell persons the principles of any financial contract is follow the cash flow. Follow the cash flow. Because you need to get away from, okay, my jargon about elimination period and restoration of benefits, home health care, riders, inflation riders. You need to follow the cash flow. Because these different instruments, so that's number one. And number two is, I generally tell persons in our financial planning practice, the complication with these products is that you are trying to hit, people want to hit too many different objectives.
Man, way off. Could not agree. Yep.
Some people say, look, I'm going to invest, I'm going to purchase this life insurance with long-term care benefits, and I get stock type returns.
Yep.
Right. And I can understand that can look alluring. That said, is you have to remember that the sellers are clipping something from there. They're getting something from it, from making it look that way. They're not, now the market's competitive, right? I can tell you if there's one seller of this type of policy, there are 20.
Yep.
But my point is I try not to mix up financial objectives. Meaning, if you want financial markets risks, there's your E-Trade account.
Financial markets, exactly.
If you want insurance matters, this is the insurance matter.
Yep.
I guess the last point is people have to understand that for, let's just say for every $1,000 of premium, the question is what bang for the buck do you get?
Yep.
So long-term care insurance, traditional long-term care insurance, very difficult because of underwriting. It's going to be more difficult, right? Because we haven't talked to, a totally different podcast would be the fact that insurance underwriting is getting harder now because of COVID-19. No question. We've received notice certain application processes are on hold, or there are companies are creating riders, attestations to say on your application, you must attest to the following on your application. That is not, you can expect that.
That's for life insurance and LTC or just LTC?
Well, on just boilerplate life insurance.
Whoa.
Even on universal life, we have seen, also remember there are exams that have to be done in many cases, blood tests, for example. In many states, you can't get that, right? That can't be called essential. You have an elective test.
Oh, I never even thought about that.
And these are some of the topics of, what the benefits of planning ahead.
Yeah.
Right. And don't get me wrong, we're never planning ahead to be for a UFO to land on our front lawn.
Right.
But this is that extreme example of, I'm in great health, we'll get to it later.
Right.
Well, now your neighbor has COVID-19, and now as a result, your underwriting is harder, or your application is now delayed.
Or your premiums are higher. I mean, it's just
that's a totally different, that is for sure true, right? Because what will happen is the actuarial tables will be adjusted and life expectancy will decline. It can't be increased, right? I mean, let's just presume, right? So as a result, the cost of insurance is going to be higher, period. That's it. And you have lower interest rates. So as a result, the premium's got to be higher. So you add these into the pot, right? There's only one direction. So this is what's important. You're talking about the universal life with long-term care, is that generally, so when people are selecting across all these different options, you got to look at this stuff carefully. It's just back to the bang for the buck, is that if you can pass the underwriting of traditional long-term care, the bang for the buck is much greater, right? Can you get much greater benefit? Yes, but there are other risks involved. And so it's not a simple exercise. Do I think that life insurance with long-term care rider is a good thing? I do in general, but you do need to pay attention. And I tell people, look, you think Medicare is complicated. That is nothing compared to life insurance with long-term care rider, because that language isn't regulated. This is, Josh's long-term plus versus J insurance company, accelerated benefits, ultra. And we're making up our terms with our own definitions, not regulated by the federal government. Whereas under Medicare, these terms, these definitions of what is it is enforced and defined by the federal government, and the carriers are told, these are your rules, you will play.
Completely uniform. There's a uniform across the board.
Exactly. And the carriers have no choice. So this is, not to be just extra reasons that people should be more positive on Medicare. In fact, on MedicareResources.org, the next article, here's your sneak peek. On that website, my next lengthy post will be 5 reasons why people should be happy we become Medicare eligible. And
so MedicareResources.org. We'll put that in the show notes. Folks, I'll put a link to Jay's book in the show notes too. It's on Amazon, right, Jay? I mean,
Amazon. And if you got a bookstore in your neighborhood, that you can order it from there if you want to support your local bookstore.
Oh, man, right on. Perfect.
You can imagine, of all the small businesses, you can't imagine one's hurt more than the local bookstore. You can't go there. You can't leave your fingerprints on book. I mean, you can't have a cup of coffee at the cafe, at the bookstore. So if you have that in your local area, please, that can be also used. They can get the book, no problem.
And also, I mean, to be perfectly honest, if you got your folks or you got somebody else that you're concerned about, and say, hey, look, send them a copy of the book. I mean, just go on Amazon, use it. I mean, it can't hurt, you know what I'm saying, to get that book into other people's hands so they can say, hey, stop focusing so much on day trading, focus on the stuff that's important. And this is it. Jay, I'm going to have to, I'm hitting my wall here. I'm an old man, dude.
Not a problem. I've overstayed my welcome.
Guy. Much obliged for being here, brother. You're a good man, Jay. I don't care what they say. We got my man
there you go.
Moon here say, oh, Buckeyes and what are we gonna do? And I like to rub it in.
Yes, So the idea is I'm licensed in Ohio, and despite all that's not going to be a problem.
Thanks for being here, man. Appreciate it, Jay.
Appreciate the time, Josh. Thanks very much for having
Thanks.
me.
Have a good evening. Thanks, sir.
You too.
All right. Bye-bye. Thanks for you all being here, by the way.
All right. Good night, everybody.
Good boy. Let's go.